All right. Well, I'll give an introduction while we wait for it to even out. In any case, thank you everyone for having me here for the Science Accessibility Conference 2021. My name is Ruvimbo Samanga and my pronouns are she and her. I am a young African woman from Bulawayo, Zimbabwe, which is in the southern tip of Africa. And so let me go straight into it without wasting any more of your precious time. I am a lawyer by background, so of course, much of what I'll speak about today is linked to policy and how especially civil society groups can operate through policy. And I think our first port of call would be the Outer Space Treaty, which I refer to as the Constitution of Outer Space. And what the Outer Space Treaty says about how we should engage with one another in outer space is that outer space and exploration in outer space should be conducted for the benefit and in the interests of all states, regardless of their degree of economic or scientific development. And this really contextualizes how the drafters of Outer Space Treaty laws wanted to be inclusive in bringing in especially developing countries, marginalized communities, and really any stakeholders in outer space that might be deemed as not having the requisite capabilities to contribute. And the express idea is to give them that opportunity to contribute. Interestingly, the Outer Space Treaty is an example of binding law, but we also have instances of non-binding laws, which are principles that serve to guide states or other actors. And one of these includes the Benefits Declaration. What the Benefits Declaration does is it describes in more detail how we are expected to make accessible space resources and benefits thereto. There is no widespread or conclusive and comprehensive definition of what space benefits are, but I've come up with a creative one myself, which is quite succinctly the beneficiation or giving access to scientific discoveries and any commercial benefit thereto. And I think that quite sums up the nature of outer space, which is we are looking to attain scientific knowledge, and there is expected to be some monetary gain from doing so. And we need to find more creative ways of doing either. And how do we do this? Looking at the Benefits Declaration, namely Article 5A to B, we know that firstly, we can promote. How do we promote? We promote by looking at how to advance the development of space science and technology applications. So this is the practical tech development that we're looking at. We can also foster, that is fostering relevant and appropriate space capabilities in interested states. This means that every state will have its strengths and weaknesses. It's important for us to recognize within our states or within our organizational structures what our strengths are, and thus help one another to fulfill our strengths and cover our weaknesses. And then we also have to facilitate. What are we facilitating? We are facilitating the exchange of expertise and technology on a mutually acceptable basis. Now I'm going to take a pause at this third one, especially because this is the one that most speaks to the presentation, and I think most speaks to the heart of the Science Accessibility Conference, which is facilitating exchange of knowledge and information on a mutually acceptable basis. And what will follow now is some practical examples of how I have worked to contribute to this noble endeavor. Just to give a bit of clarification that I did not mention before, The reason I am relying on international space laws is because up until now, they've developed a very state-centric characteristic, but that is not true to the multi-stakeholder nature of outer space. Outer space has so many stakeholders that each have equal claim to its benefits, and more treaty drafters and interpreters are reading in the applicability of the treaties to other stakeholders, such as the private sector, academia, and even individuals. What this means is that the outer space treaties as strategies for outer space can also be used practically by civil society actors to help guide and foster harmony in the way that we all come together to benefit from space. So without further ado, what are some creative digital outreach mechanisms that I have benefited from and that I am putting in my time and effort to bolster? Well, the first one would be webinars and training. Fairly straightforward, given that we are all here today and benefiting in one way, shape, or form from, firstly, open access learning and as well peer-to-peer learning. And I know you must be thinking, learning online is a drudgery, and I completely agree with you. And that is why we need creative educators who can take information and make it brief and engaging in a way that draws people in. I also think that it's important to be creative, especially with the younger generation, and I will discuss that a bit more in the next slide. But the second way is also through research. In that way, we can also foster not only open access research, but most importantly, open access research from a diversity of actors. I personally have had the opportunity to publish one of my first journal articles with the European Center for Space Law that is due for release next year. And I can't tell you how immense an impact it will have to have an Afrocentric, indigenous, emerging community voice in some of the prevailing issues of our time in space development. And we need more voices. Last but not least, the use of creative digital media. And here I am especially alluding to podcasts, which I find are one of the most accessible ways of getting information to people all around the world. And as you can probably tell from what has happened today, internet access is quite a huge challenge in emerging nations. Bandwidth sometimes is not strong enough to maintain even the most basic of video meetings. So podcasts are really a mobile, cost-friendly way of getting huge amounts of information to the most remote of communities. And I currently facilitate a podcast with my good friend Juliana Rotola, where we provide a feminist view to lunar exploration, looking at social justice and how we can foster this most important theme into outer space discourse, especially as we go back to the moon. Now, I'll discuss a bit about children's outreach. Children are important. They are the future generation and the future beneficiaries and contributors to space development. So they need extra care in engaging them in this important theme. And STEM, while being a very exciting subject, can also be quite complex. So you have to find creative ways to get children involved. One of the ways I have done so is through the development of a comic book, which follows my unique journey into the space industry, while also focusing on select STEM themes, which help, at the very least, inspire children to aspire towards not only STEM careers, but any career which is creative and out of the box, and which inspires them to be thought-provoking. I've also coordinated a space education curriculum in Zimbabwe called AstroZimba. And this space education curriculum incorporated not only a digital component, but also a highly interactive personal component as well, which included, of course, the comic books, games, storytelling, songs, and really any fun activity that inspires children to want to learn more. I'm excited to announce as well that we have partnered with the Rakia mission, which is a mission fostered by Israeli astronaut Eitan Stib, who is one of the Axiom 1 astronauts slated to go to outer space, namely the International Space Station, with the Axiom 1 and SpaceX spaceflight happening in February of next year. And they've given us such a wonderful capacity building opportunity to monitor thunderstorms and lightning strikes through geographic camera systems and implement technology in the most remote schools in Zimbabwe in a way that has never been done before. The mission results are going to be shown live during this ISS mission with Eitan on board. And I can't explain to you how exciting it will be for the kids to have these dreams of theirs realized on such a global stage. It is such a wonderful opportunity to get to partner with these international organizations because they really understand the meaning of international cooperation, which until now has been very ambiguous. International cooperation means developed states helping developing states rise up the rung in that ladder. And likewise, when civil society is looking at ways to promote access, it's all about highlighting the most vulnerable and marginalized communities and making it easier for them to contribute. So to that end, I'd like to close by sharing some organizations that I believe are doing very well to foster this kind of thinking. If you're interested in law, there is wonderful digital activism being promoted by, firstly, the Space Court Foundation, and secondly, the International Institute for Space Law's Knowledge Constellation. And they use all sorts of videos and social media promotion to help access legal resources. When it comes to outreach, you can also look into the Secure World Foundation and also the Space Generation Advisory Council, which many of us are aware of today, and which is where I had my start. If you're looking into women-led organizations, we have the Women in Aerospace chapter, which is not only open to women, but also men who are willing to support women advancement in space. And finally, we have a knowledge gap. We have a knowledge gap when it comes to marginalized groups. To my knowledge, I don't believe that there is an Indigenous community organization, and neither have I seen a disability rights community or organization in space. And I think that this would be a very good opportunity to take this moment and bring to light the rights of underserved communities to participate and be a part of space development. And I leave you with this quote from Mae Jemison, who says that you have the right to be involved, you have something important to contribute, and you have to take the risk to contribute it. And I'd like to add there that organizations have to take the risk to have everyone contribute to outer space discourse. So to that end, I'd like to thank the organizers at the Sci Access 2021 for giving us the opportunity and for taking that risk to have all of these diverse and important voices contributing. Thank you so much.